So is 3,000 meters visibility enough? Is it difficult to land on a tabletop airfield, a plateau? The pilot in command, incidentally, was highly experienced. He had over 15,000 hours of flying experience, and he wasn't just a commercial pilot license holder. He was an airline transport pilot license holder. The co-pilot had about 1,500 hours flying experience, and she was a commercial pilot license holder. And we'll explain the difference to you during this broadcast. Joining us on India First are two very experienced pilots, and one of them, of course, is former Director General of Flight Safety and Inspections, Air Marshal Sanjeev Kapoor. Welcome. Former Director General of Indian Air Force's Flight Safety and Inspections. Squad Leader Debolina Das is now a commercial pilot and an aviation specialist. Welcome. Air Marshal Kapoor, your first impression, given the information that's currently in public domain on the visibility being around 3,000 meters, pilots opting for a second approach, and even in that approach, initially saying runway not visible, and seconds later saying it's visible, but sadly crashing at the threshold.
Good evening to you, Gaurav, and fellow panelists and the viewers. This early morning, if somebody has flown around Pune, you get morning haze and fog. It's normal in that area during the winters. The visibility required for Baramati is a VFR airfield. For benefit of your viewers, it's a visual flight rules airfield where you require minimum 5 kilometer visibility to operate at these airfields. There is no aid here. It means there is no ILS, there is no VORDME, there is no NDB, there is no RNAV, nothing, no aid to the pilot with regards to instruments is available for landing. It's only
So
visual.
it's line of sight flying, no
Yes,
instruments to
it
guide
is.
you, no instruments to help you land.
Yes, it is total. It is total visual flying. So now, when the aircraft typically comes in to land at a VFR airfield, the ATC asks the pilot, "Is the runway in sight?" That is the normal condition, and then only is he clear to make an approach and landing. So in this case, what I gather from your channel and what I have seen and read, the pilots did commit that the runway is in sight and they were clear to make an approach. Now, informally, I read somewhere that the visibility was much lower than 3 kilometers. Now, it is not that the ATC, which has reported 3 kilometers, they are at a fault or something. But many a times in this haze, this thing, the lateral visibility is good. But when you come on the approach, the RVR, that is what we call the runway trans approach visibility, is less. So the pilots, in all probability, would have found difficulty in sighting the runway on final approach. From a height, you can see the runway. That visibility is good. But when you come in for landing, the thin layer of fog and mist which surrounds the bottom area around the plateaus is my appreciation that what would have happened. So the
My
crew
God.
continued at around the landing position. They sighted poor visibility and went around. Like you covered, they opened power, they made another approach. Now, for benefit of your viewers, the runway 11 at Baramati is displaced. Now, why is it displaced? It is displaced because there are obstructions on the approach path. So the available length, which is around 1700 meters, has been displaced by about 300 odd meters. So the available length for landing, that is, we call it landing distance available LDA, is around 1400 meters, which is around roughly 4,500 feet to the pilot. Now,
Okay.
this would have been playing on the back of the mind. And also, I read somewhere that the fuel is not available in Baramati.
So
It
they were
means there is
carrying
no
extra
refueling
fuel.
facility. So he has to have the fuel in the aeroplane for the return leg also. So the aircraft would be
Goodness.
heavier because it is having fuel for the return journey also. So coupled with a missed approach, coupled with a reduced runway length, and the added pressure of having a VIP on board also plays on the mind of the pilot. It happened during General Rawat's crash.
Yes, that was terrible.
In Yes, so
That was a
20,
CFIT, but a control flight into terrain.
yes,
But I'll come to
but
that just a moment. Okay, go on. Complete your point, sir. Complete your
so
point, sir.
in the second approach, in my appreciation, when the ATC asked him, "Do you have the runway in sight?" First he said no, but when he said yes, he would have spotted the runway very late. So one visual which I'm seeing, there's a massive bank onto one side
Yes.
to align and land the aircraft, and the margins are so low close to the ground that you have to roll out and execute into a landing. And in this process, in my appreciation, he would have mushed into the ground, or something. No, the reaction time would have been too low for him to make a landing out of it. This
And
is my
that would have
prima
been so painful, when you mush into ground, a virtual control flight into terrain, if I may. But Squad Leader Debolina Das, the pilot in command, had 15,000 plus hours of flying experience. The co-pilot had about 1,500 hours, but an eyewitness said that the aircraft crashed, just short of the runway, 100 feet before the runway. So, in your view, you concur with the Air Marshal that it was perhaps unable to align with the runway at the final approach, descended too soon because of the fuel it was carrying, maybe it came too low because of the shorter runway that was available. How do you see the situation, your appreciation?
Good evening, Gaurav. I mean, whatever Sir said is perfectly adding to the situation. And if I have to think for some more reasons, one thing is in the morning, 8:48, a runway which is facing the east, 1-1, has the
Yes.
sun in front of you. So the sun is in your eyes. Your visibility is already being affected by the sun falling on your
Yes.
eyes. Firstly.
Yes.
Secondly, as Sir said, there is low haze or low level cloud. Now, these low level clouds are in sheets. Sometimes you are out of it, sometimes you again go into it. Now, when the pilot must have done a go around in the first approach, he wanted to align himself properly so that he has the runway inside throughout the circuit that he is making. But when you turn, the turn to the final in a jet aircraft which has a high speed, it is a slightly tight turn. Like basically, if you climb too high in the circuit, then you will lose the runway. If you are low but your speed is more and you have to turn and align, it generally happens that it becomes a tight turn. Now
And it
when
does
you are
appear in those pictures, that video, if you can see it on India Today, that new CCTV camera, it does appear to be a very tight turn that the pilot seems to be making here, ma'am.
Yes, so if it is a tight turn with the captain on the left side doing a left tight turn, it is very difficult for him to be able to gauge the distance vertically with the runway when there is shifting fog or there are layers of fog. So
Yes.
at a moment he lost it, the next moment he might have seen it. But we don't know whether the next moment again he was not able to see it because he couldn't give the call to land. And
And then there
also,
was no time, because this is a
yeah,
time that
he
you're
was very
so low
close.
that,
He was maybe the speed was more. He was in a tight turn. And then, if I could add, if Sir agrees with me, there is a concept of stall. Stall is
yes.
that the aircraft loses its controllability. If the speed is more and you are in a turn, generally aircraft stall at a very low speed. If the speed is reducing, and then the aircraft stalls, means it loses its
So does a
control.
Learjet, does this aircraft give a stall warning, on instruments, or this aircraft doesn't? Larger Boeings and Airbus, it does
No,
give a stall warning.
every aircraft is supposed to give a stall warning. But when
Every
you
aircraft
are
gives a
very
stall warning.
close, yes, mostly all these jet aircrafts. This is this Learjet 45 XR is a highly equipped, well
Yes.
avionics aircraft, and it is. But what I suppose that when you are in a turn, the speed for your stall increases. Like suppose if
Absolutely.
you
So, Air Marshal Kapoor, let me also quickly bring you in. Are these tabletop runways more difficult to land? Is it more difficult to land on a plateau and more difficult to take off from? Because Captain VK Singh, managing this VSR Ventures company, he says they've landed at Baramati many times. He himself flew Ajit Dada Pawar there recently. So, according to him, they know this place like the back of their hand.
tabletop runways are good if everything is good. But if you recall, we've had an accident at Calicut. We've
Yes.
had an Air India crash at Mangalore. These both are also tabletop runways. So tabletop runways, have a peculiarity. We have one Avantipur in
In
J&K
Kashmir.
that is also on a
Yes.
plateau. So typically, what happens at these airfields is that you do not have a perception of continuous ground. Invariably, when you come in for landing, the ground appears to you in a particular way. But in a tabletop, it is just you approach at the beginning of the runway. And like I told you, in here, the runway is displaced by 1,000 feet due to obstacles. So I have no landing experience at Baramati, but my guess is there would be obstacles on the short finals. That's why the runway is displaced. And also, it's on a plateau. So by the time the crew has picked up the threshold, by the time they have decided, and if the pilot on the left is flying, it is difficult for him to spot on the right because the aircraft has gone into the ground in the left. So he is not in a position to pick up the runway on the right, and it's a visual runway. So he
Yes.
would be in a process of identifying, and then, like she said, could have stalled. Could have stalled with excessive bank on one side. This is
Yeah.
prima facie my appreciation. Yes.
How long before we know what happened, the cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder, because that readback of the instruction to land, there was no communication after that. So perhaps the CVR and the FDR, the flight data recorder, Squad Leader Debolina, that would have information?
Definitely, that will definitely have information. We will be able to get all information once the investigation takes its first steps. The decoding of the CVR, the FDR will give what were the parameters, even if it has stalled, not stalled, if there was any technical problem at the last moment, if the engine has had some problem, if the flight controls have had some problem, or if there was a conversation between the crew inside the cockpit, whatever they
Right.
faced will be available.
Sir, you've carried out multiple investigations as Director General Flight Safety and Inspections. How long before the picture emerges? How long does it take to decode what's in the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder? How does this investigation proceed from this point?
The AIB team, as you just mentioned, would have arrived. So they immediately look for FDR and CVR, the two things that are essential, which are pulled out of the aeroplane. I don't know where is the milking setup for this aircraft. Is it in India? Is it abroad? So these are packed and sent to that agency for decoding the whole thing. So, preliminary investigation after the report has been analyzed
Okay.
typically takes 4 to 5 days.
Four to
To
five days.
reach a conclusion because the parameters of the rate of descent, speed, angle of attack, thrust, power, settings, slats, flaps, undercarriage, all the things which compound for an accident close to ground are analyzed. So, with artificial intelligence and machine, these are fed now, and a simulated flight path is then carved out after actual feedings. So, there are computers now which
Okay.
realistically give the flight path. So that when it is brought and the others collaboration and the things on ground, the impact,
Yes.
like we teach in accident investigation, if the engine is at low power, how much is the impact around that crash site? If the speeds are very high, how far would the tail would have flown off? All those
Yes.
parameters are checked, and then a conclusive thing, both by seeing on the ground, CVR, FDR, and simulation, it is extrapolated that this is the reason, and
And
preliminary
we'll be
report
tracking that
should be
story
out.
very closely. I want you to stay on with me.